Let's get to the news. President Biden was set to discuss his infrastructure proposal today with the top Republican negotiator, who I think is Joe Manchin. In an op-ed yesterday, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin announced that he would be voting against a new voting rights bill and reiterated his support for the filibusters. So when I say he's Democratic, that's just like the party he's in. Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney said in a new interview that former President Trump's incitement of the January attack on the Capitol is, quote, the most dangerous thing a president has done. Previously, it was go to a play. So I'm glad Scollins didn't change after a week off, and he spent the whole week in sensitivity training. Former President Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, announced over the weekend that she will not run for a Senate seat in North Carolina due to her young children because she's seen firsthand what happens when you neglect Trump children. Former President Trump's blog shut down permanently last week. Oh, come on, you're not supposed to shut down blogs. You're supposed to slowly stop posting till you forget you have one. Then a year later, you do one of those, hey guys, sorry I haven't updated a while posts, even though literally no one's been asking and no one could care less. A spokesperson for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson recently announced that he married his fiancée in a small private ceremony, just what the world needed, another less effective Johnson & Johnson. Today was former Vice President Mike Pence's 62nd birthday, despite Donald Trump's best efforts. Former Vice President Mike Pence, recent Pence. I think I got it right on the previous joke.
Yeah, you know it.
So, like, I know what it is. Wait, you guys remember this Pence? Former Vice President Mike Pence recently spoke at a Lincoln-Reagan dinner in New Hampshire about the January attack on the Capitol. He didn't intend to, but that's just how flashbacks work. Officials in Los Angeles County are reportedly set to vote soon on a law to prohibit feeding peacocks and make it punishable by up to a $1,000 fine or 6 months in jail. Incidentally, feeding the peacock is also what I call making 200 shows a year. Oh, and she has an appetite. A 30-year-old woman in Texas was arrested for trespassing recently after she allegedly posed as her 13-year-old daughter and spent the day at her school. Damn, lady, why didn't you just enjoy high school when you were there? Wait, so she's 30, your daughter's 13. Oh, okay, I see. Enjoy yourself. And finally, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos announced today in an Instagram post that he and his brother will be on the first crewed spaceflight of his private rocket company later this year. If he wants to see space so badly, he should just open one of his packages. President Biden leaves tomorrow on his first foreign trip since taking office, and like all 78-year-old men, that means he's already at the airport. Vice President Kamala Harris addressed potential migrants in Guatemala during a news conference yesterday and said, quote, do not come, do not come. Wow, it's like she read directly from the Statue of Liberty. Wait, I swear to God it used to be there. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio announced he's planning a concert in Central Park later this summer to celebrate the reopening of the city after the pandemic. And this is the guy you want playing in your concerts. It's going to be that band from the Viagra commercial, then a Jimmy Buffett cover band called Jimmy Buffet. Then at 8 p.m., everybody out of the park or the cops move in. CNN yesterday obtained the audio of a 2019 phone call made by former President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, in which Giuliani pressured a Ukrainian official to announce an investigation into possible corruption by then presidential candidate Joe Biden. But it's actually not a slam dunk for prosecutors. See if you can tell why.
I kind of think that this could be a good thing for having a much better relationship where we really understand each other.
Thank you for calling the Long Island Aquarium. Your call is very important to us.
Amazon's website was temporarily down this morning due to an issue with their cloud computing services provider. But don't worry, I'm sure that flight into outer space next month will go great. Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene on Friday sent a letter to President Biden that demanded he launch an investigation into Dr. Anthony Fauci and provide answers by June 31st, a date that does not exist, which is surprising considering the last thing I would have expected her to do is extend Pride Month. Former President Trump is set to go on a tour with former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly later this year. Oh, better lock up your daughters. Seriously, though, it's probably best if you do, just till they're out of town. The owner of a pub in England recently discovered a time capsule from the 1970s. Hidden in the walls of the bar, locals are fascinated because they've never seen anything that new. Nathan's Famous yesterday began offering meatless hot dogs, and for what it's worth, it took Joey Chestnut 50 dogs before he noticed. So, pretty good. The world's largest Harry Potter flagship store recently opened in New York, which displays over 1,000 props from the movie series, or, and hear me out, it's a hardware store. Finally, in a new interview, sexual health expert Dr. Ruth said that 90-year-olds should still have sex if they have a good partner, but added, quote, if you don't have a partner, they should satisfy themselves. So now, if you hear Grandpa had a stroke, maybe it's good news. You know, I'm not going to name the guy who wrote that, but if you watch this show, you know who it is. Tank top. Roots for the New England Patriots. Favorite movie character is Casey Affleck from Good Will Hunting. President Biden yesterday ended infrastructure negotiations with Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito and opened talks with another group of GOP lawmakers led by Senator Bill Cassidy. Dude, you can keep searching, but you're not going to find a reasonable group of GOP senators. You're like a woman who says, maybe if I go to a different Buffalo Wild Wings, I'll find a husband. During an interview this week with NBC News anchor Lester Holt, Vice President Kamala Harris defended the migrant situation at the southern border, and said, quote, there's not going to be a quick fix. I don't know. It seemed like you had one the other day.
Do not come. Do not come.
According to a recent poll, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams leads the field in the New York mayoral Democratic primary ahead of former presidential hopeful Andrew Yang. Said Yang, what the hell is Brooklyn? Right-wing cable channel Newsmax reportedly turned down Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz earlier this year after he approached them about a job. But if you knew what kind of job he was asking for, you'd turn him down too. Federal prosecutors recently arrested a Pennsylvania man who allegedly posed as former President Trump to collect funds for a fake re-election organization, but instead used the money for personal expenses. What did they charge him with? Plagiarism? Starbucks announced yesterday it's reintroducing its 10-cent discount for customers who bring personal reusable cups. Meanwhile, Dunkin' customers can save $1 if they just hold out their hands. That's our Dunkin' customer? Feel like that fights the joke. Off to my business meeting. Ford yesterday unveiled its new hybrid engine compact pickup truck. So if you love driving a pickup, but you care about the environment, I kind of just want to learn more about you. And finally, a travel agency has announced plans to offer a Friends-themed cruise next year. And nothing says I miss the 90s more than still using a travel agent. While preparing to board Air Force One yesterday on his first foreign trip since taking office, President Biden was hit in the neck by a flying cicada. And get this, Biden still thinks they can find common ground. Come on, man, let's work together. President Biden addressed a group of U.S. troops serving abroad in the UK yesterday and promised that he wouldn't hold back in his meeting next week with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So look out, Vladimir. You're about to get called Buster Brown. Before leaving yesterday for the UK, President Biden said that the trip is all about strengthening the alliance with Europe. It's never a good sign. Anytime a couple goes on a trip to strengthen their alliance, you know they're about 2 weeks away from a divorce. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden met today with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's wife, Carrie, over tea. Oh, man. It's like those moms in the park who only hang out because their kids are friends. Oh, Joe fell down. Joe, get up. You're fine, honey. Boris, what did you just put in your mouth? Spit it out, Boris. After President Biden this week told her he would end their infrastructure negotiations, Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito said in an interview yesterday that she was disappointed in Biden's decision. Said progressives disappointed in Biden. Finally, some common ground. Vice President Kamala Harris invited every female senator to a dinner next week at her residence, while Kyrsten Sinema invited them to adult Quidditch and a midnight screening of Rocky Horror. France is reportedly sending the U.S. a replica statue of Liberty, nicknamed the Little Sister, and it'll be the only foreigner we let in this year. The final episode of the reality show Keeping Up with the Kardashians aired tonight, and if you've never seen the show before, trust me, you've kept up. They're sisters and they're rich. Got it. True story, my wife loves that show. I've never seen an episode. I only hear it while she's watching it on her phone. And I feel like I've heard this 100 times. It's just really hard having sisters. And finally, Mattel announced today that it will launch a new line of Barbies that are made from recycled plastic called Barbie Loves the Ocean, which is a great idea. I just wish they'd recycled it a little bit more.